in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, David Wohlreich. He is the Head of People Experience and Operations at Front. David, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our audience, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. It's great to see you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm David Wohlreich, pronouns he, him, his. I live in Menlo Park in California, and I lead people experience and operations at Front. When I was a kid, I kind of wanted to be everything you could imagine. Some kids sort of come out of the womb knowing exactly what they want. They want to be a ballerina or doctor or lawyer. I had no idea. I changed my mind weekly. But I would say the two most common themes, I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to be a psychiatrist because I really liked communication, coaching, and education. And so it's kind of appropriate that I work in people in HR.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely related to your role now, as I could imagine. And I have a lot of questions about your day-to-day experience. And the first is around this kind of hybrid approach to work. We're seeing a lot of articles around how people are thinking about their kind of workspace and this hybrid approach, which is pretty unique as well in terms of people being in the office, but also working virtually. Why was it important for you in Front to have this hybrid approach to work instead of a remote or virtual first environment?
I think one of the really exciting things, but of course challenging, of the future of work is that it isn't a future. There isn't one model that companies will adopt universally. And so every company, just like every individual, is different. From the beginning, Front knew that our priority had to be finding something that worked for our people, something that was pragmatic, that allowed us to meet the needs of our thousands of customers all over the world, and do it in a way that was aligned with our values and our culture. Front's vision is to make work happier, to create at scale, meaningful human connections, and ensure that companies can operate at scale, but still with the human first and with people at the center. So our decision-making and our internal operations have to be aligned with that. And so we started, as I think we do most major decisions, listening, talking to frontiers, talking to our employees, and trying to understand how they were feeling and what they wanted. We knew that we wanted data, and so we did surveying, we did focus groups, we listened to folks. And we also knew that we had to find something that would work for who we were as a company, who we are as a company. We knew first and foremost that frontiers join Front and stay at Front because of culture. We have an extraordinary product. Business is going really well. We've got a world-class executive team, including our leader, Mathilde Collin, who's our co-founder and CEO. We've got customers who rave about us. We've got sort of all of the things that check the boxes, but so do a lot of other companies. It's a great time in tech and in startups. Mm-hmm. It's our culture and the way that we interact that ultimately attracts and retains frontiers, that brings people in. And so we knew that culture is created through relationships. Culture is created through the rituals and the ways that we interact. And in-person collaboration is a huge part of that. So we knew pretty early on that office-based communication, collaboration, and innovation were going to be a part of our future, and were something that we were going to retain. At the same time, we also knew that people are in very different places, and what we heard very clearly from employees was that they wanted flexibility. They wanted options. The future of work is definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of problem space. And so we ultimately landed on a hybrid structure where we have dedicated and intentional collaboration in our offices on particular days, and then much more flexible sort of free time other days where folks can work from home, they can work from the office as they see fit. We also built out different geographic profiles for employees, recognizing that what works for one role or one person may not be appropriate or may not be best for everyone. So we've got sort of four different buckets of geographic profile of frontiers. First is office-based, and this is the sort of traditional in-office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's very few of those roles. Those are really office managers, IT support staff, folks who really can't do their work effectively remotely. Notice I didn't say Friday because we have something a little different on Fridays due to flexible Fridays, which I expect we'll talk about a little bit later. The next category is hybrid, and that's where 70-75% of our workforce sits. And that's sort of our core expectation. These are folks who are in the office Tuesdays and Thursdays for dedicated collaboration and sort of innovation culture time. Monday and Wednesday is as folks like. So if you want to work from home, as I usually do, Mondays and Wednesdays, people feel free to do so. If you want to be in the office, our offices are open. And so long as public health conditions allow, folks are coming in, and folks who want that traditional in the office everyday experience can still get it. Then we've got a few more remote profiles, what we call the frequent flyer or commuter profile. These are folks who generally work in the office 1 to 5 days every month. They're a little further out, but they're easily accessible. So there are people who come in, they might fly in for a week and then go back home. It helps us broaden the talent profiles of where we can hire and get great folks. And then we've got some truly dedicated remote distributed workers, folks who don't have an office assignment and whose only office experience is going to be intentional sort of on-site events. They might have team meetings or other programs. And allowing employees to opt into those profiles based in part on the roles that they're in, how successful we feel, how successful their leaders feel they can be, allows people to really opt for what works for them. And what we're finding is that a lot of employees really do want the office experience. And I'll note that it's pretty different regionally. So our Paris office, for example, people really never stopped coming in. We had to close the office for public health a few times, but otherwise, like the office is at capacity. Whereas in the Bay Area, we saw a lot more folks opt into working remotely, at least part-time.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate you laying that out as well. And I definitely agree with this not approach of one size fits all, really asking your people, because every organization is different. Employees and team members are at different parts of their careers and lives. And the reality is that a lot of people don't have space to have multiple people working at home 24/7 and all of the time, and having the opportunity to have a defined space for collaboration and innovation, as you were talking about, clear expectations is really important too. I know you mentioned as you're continuing to grow the team, talent acquisition, company culture is a key differentiator, and I would agree with you there. As the team expands, how are you thinking about intentionally scaling Friends company culture in that regard?
I think we talk about like what are the things that keep you up at night, and hopefully nothing keeps you up at night. Hopefully you're getting a good night's sleep. But when you think about what would be the worst failures for our team, for our function, it's losing in our growth what makes the company special and what brings people into the company. We are going through a profound growth phase. We started at about 350 employees. We're targeting to go up above 600 this year. Pretty profound growth.
That's a lot.
Including geographically. So we are based in San Francisco. We've got a large office in Paris, but we're expanding into Dublin, Ireland, Chicago, Illinois, and then having more remote workers sort of all over the world. And so that is the great challenge. That is the great question. How do you keep the great stuff, but do it at scale? Do it with efficiency, do it in a way that is successful for a much larger business. Some of it starts with intentionality, making it a priority, making culture as important as time and cost to hire for recruiting metrics, as important as performance distribution in reviews, feedback. The sort of operational structure of HR has to consider culture. It has to consider what are employees feeling? What are they saying? How are we demonstrating and showing up? So there are a few things that we do and that I think companies are well served by doing. One is continuing to ask. If you don't measure it, you can't possibly achieve it. And so we look at our net promoter score. We look at, is Front a great place to work? Do you recommend it to others? And that's really important because that not only says that people are getting something out of the work, but it's something they want to share. The best talent acquisition strategy you can possibly have is to have employees who love their work and want to bring everyone they know into the company.
Yeah.
And that is really powerful. So before the pandemic, we had incredibly high net promoter scores. Frontiers really loved front, wanted to stay at front, wanted to bring people in. And we've been able to maintain that high 90s, mid 90s through really intentional design, through listening, through measuring employee sentiment, asking folks what's going well, what's not. When we do employee surveys, we do sort of large scale classic employee sentiment, and then we do pulse surveys. We do the large surveys, we report out results and we say, here's what's going really well. Here's what we want to work on in the next quarter. We make public commitments. We say, okay, we saw during the pandemic real concern about work-life balance, as everyone did, as everyone's facing this unprecedented public health emergency, all of the personal and professional challenges. How are we going to move the needle on that? So we did. And the major focus was staffing. We're a rapidly moving, very scrappy startup. We just need more people. We're asking folks to do a lot. And so we've invested really heavily in hiring. And then flexible Fridays and really intentional structuring to make sure that people are getting time off, and true time off, not a day off that you have to work through, which is really critical. The other real focus is on modeling. You can set whatever policies you want. How the managers, how the leaders behave is what employees internalize. You can say it's really important that you take time off. If I'm sending a bunch of emails on my holidays, my team is going to say, oh, well, that's actually the expectation. That's what I need to do to get ahead. And so we have been very intentional about modeling the behavior that we want to sort of lionize and to prioritize. And so I remember when I started, my boss, the chief people officer, Ash Alexander, was off. She was on vacation for a week and a half right after I started. I had never seen anything like that before. And it was kind of tough. I was like, I don't know where anything is. I have no idea what I'm doing. But it really struck me like, hey, this is someone with one of the highest stress, highest visibility roles in the entire company. And she's prioritizing her well-being at a time that I know she wanted to be in the office with me. And that really was a pretty powerful model. We've also had like our CEO Mathilde, she took her full maternity leave and she had a child, and has spoken very publicly about how important that was, not only to signal to the company, like, hey, if the CEO can take that time off, I, in a very, very different role, I can afford to. If the company can succeed and grow dramatically with the CEO taking her full maternity leave, I can't really make an excuse, oh, the company will fail if I take off a week. And she's also talked about how it made her a better CEO, how unplugging, how being able to take a more strategic view and look at the big picture has helped. And I think that was really important. The other really, I think, important part about scaling culture is talking about it and being very explicit.
Yeah.
The more that you can define what is the culture, how do frontiers define it, when we listen to like the words that folks use in describing collaboration, is one of the very top things that pops out. Anytime you do like a word cloud or any analysis, collaboration is right at the top. And that's great to hear because we're a collaboration tool. We're a company and product built on enabling collaboration, but it's also very critical to the way we work, that we work as an interrelated organization, not a ton of individuals sort of all off doing their own thing. And so being really mindful of intentional culture iteration and shepherding, not creation. Like the employees make the culture. We have to make sure that we're nurturing it, not hurting it.
Making the implicit explicit, what are the unspoken norms and kind of actions that you are having as well? Is there alignment between, okay, if, for example, a company has unlimited PTO, but none of the senior leaders have taken it, if you have a fantastic parental or family forming kind of policies, is anyone publicly using that and like taking the time to really speak about that as well is really important. And again, that flexibility and the gift of time, I think one of the most valuable resources you could give to someone as well is really important. You brought up kind of flexible Fridays, and I want to talk about that as well. A lot of organizations have been implementing a time or a day that has no meetings. At another organization I was at, we called it Winning Wednesdays, of no internal meetings, and other employers are testing a very popular 4-day work week, like in the United Kingdom. Tell me a little bit about the strategy behind your Flexible Fridays program at Front.
Definitely. There's no question that we are in a burnout pandemic, the sort of other pandemic alongside the public health crisis. And companies are really trying to find out, what can you do? Where does burnout come from? Time off is not a guarantee against burnout. Like, you can still be burned out, you can still struggle, but it's almost impossible to not be burned out if you're not taking real good time off and true disconnected time off. And so very early in the pandemic, as we saw stress levels rise, as employees started saying more and more like, hey, I'm not okay, I'm really struggling, as personal and professional lives completely blended together. When I'm home in my home office, this is where I live, and so I am. The sort of joke is, you're not working at home, you're living at work, and that I think is true. Like everyone is having a very hard time. And so we knew what interventions, what structure, what operational approach can we take to help relieve some of that pressure. And what we heard really clearly, again, talking to employees, listening, gathering data, was that employees wanted flexibility. They wanted control. One of the sources of burnout is feeling like you are not in control of your time. You are not in control of what happens. At the same time, we're a global company. We've got 7,500 customers in 98 countries, and our customers rely on us all the time for absolutely critical communication. So the question was, what can we do to address burnout, to address the sort of work-life balance question, while retaining our ability to surprise and delight and support our customers? And ultimately landed on a dedicated day of flexibility. What we heard more than anything was that employees wanted flexibility. So we piloted, starting from May of last year, this Flexible Fridays concept, which went through a lot of iterations and started pretty similar to what you've probably seen, and I've seen at other companies, no meeting blocks. We found that people really valued it, but wanted something more structured, wanted something a little more profound. And so we ultimately landed on a true sort of unreachable, dedicated, free day for you to use as you want. So a lot of employees, myself included, tend to use them. They're great for focus work, for deep work, where if you're in a lot of meetings, you're sort of constantly context switching, you're never going to get to what you need. And engineers obviously really value that time for heavy coding and code review. But every function has an opportunity and a need to take a step back, to think about not just operating, not just doing, but also, where are we going? What's the strategy, and what's the big picture? And Flexible Fridays provide that. It's a day when email volume drops precipitously. There's not an expectation that you're answering emails immediately. There are, I will note, some folks who are on call, because obviously we need to provide customer support. Candidates who are working with recruiters need support. And so there are folks who rotate through and have sort of shifts, so people take different opportunities to take that Flexible Friday. But it's an opportunity to spend the day as you want. And so even days when I'm working the full day, it feels otherwise like a full work day. It's so much different. It's so freeing to know there isn't a meeting on my calendar. I can go deep on a piece of work. I can go deep on some analysis and really focus, really give it my full attention, which is pretty transformative. It also means I can do other things. So I've gone to lunch, I've played video games, I've taken a nap, I've gone to the gym. It's the day that I think most frontiers tend to schedule, like doctor's appointments and other things.
I need to get done.
And it's a really wonderful sort of tool in our work balance and in our structuring how we work, because we can plan for that day and each frontier can make of it what is helpful for them. You may feel like, I just need a day off. I need a day to unplug, and I can do that. I may feel I need to catch up on emails, or I need to not answer emails. I need to work on, so we just completed our like comp performance cycle. That's a lot of very heads down data spreadsheets work.
Sure.
And so Flexible Fridays for me were the day that I got to build all of those and iterate. And I could spend 5 hours undivided attention. And attention is a really hard thing to have this day and age. And so being able to go deep has been really wonderful. My fiance is studying for her boards. And so we've like walked out and gone to lunch on Fridays, which is really so nice. It's my Flexible Friday today. So I'm doing an interview, which is really, really lovely, but would be really tough sort of scheduling through all of the other daily work things. The flip side of Flexible Friday is that we've also committed to what we call wellness days, where months that don't have a different holiday, we create a holiday, basically a sort of artificial holiday, because we also want to make sure that people are taking time off. So this Monday is a wellness day in the US. It would actually normally be today. We moved it to Monday, so it aligns with the Easter holiday in Europe. So all teams can sort of have the day off. And that's great. There is just nothing like a actual vacation day when the whole company is shut down, when your emails aren't piling up. And that really gets down to our discussion earlier. You can offer all the holidays, you can offer all the benefits. It's how people use them and how your leaders model them. And so if I send an email and my boss doesn't respond until after the holiday, that's a great signal. And that's something that we are very serious about, not only our leadership, our managers, but everyone seeing. Like a lot of companies, we also have flexible PTO in the US, so you sort of take off the vacation you need. The challenge with that is not people taking too much. Very rarely do you see anyone who's like trying to take too much. The problem is people aren't taking enough. The problem is it is a manager expectation. It is a need that your teams are getting time off. And so making that explicit, as you said, making the values, making the patterns very clear. Hey, your team has to take time off and they have to really unplug is very important. And Flexible Fridays is a really wonderful part of that whole toolkit. And we know it's really powerful because employees mention it as one of their favorite things. We see very clearly in the data. So our data team, which does a lot of sophisticated modeling, supporting all our customers, we had them look at our traffic flows and we saw email volume significantly declines on Flexible Fridays, which means like people are actually doing the thing. We can say we have Flexible Fridays, but people may not follow it. And Flexible Fridays make frontiers more likely to stay at the company, which is something that comes up again and again. I'm hiring for a few roles in my team. It's something that candidates are really excited about, that recruiters can talk about. Here's something that we're doing that's a little different. And I'm really excited about it.
No, I think
as you can tell. I mean,
that's incredible.
It would be really hard to go work somewhere else that doesn't have it. Like, oh, it's Friday. It's another day of meetings.
Absolutely. It's a day that you look forward to for different reasons. And I appreciate that you not only have this program in place, but you didn't, let's say, set it and forget it. You're asking how employees are feeling about it. You're sharing this with candidates and also receiving feedback and looking at the data to say this is really impactful, and asking again, like how people are using those days, and just seeing the flywheel effect of having this time and kind of non-negotiable, if you will, to make sure that people are taking time to do the deep work. I just had a deep work day this week and it was incredible, not checking your calendar notifications or, looking at all of the Slacks or whatever program you use coming up as well. And I think that's really important to a person's total well-being as not only an employee and teammate, but individual. And we're seeing a lot of folks really invest in the well-being of their team. Can you tell me about some of the other ways you are really operationalizing or creating those non-negotiables in the investment of, employees' well-being?
Definitely. So mental health, mental wellness has been sort of the top discussion in benefits for many years. It's the pandemic before the pandemic. And so it's something that Front takes very seriously, and that I take very seriously. It's, I think, core to our vision of working happier is supporting employees and supporting employees through not only a profoundly challenging meta environment, but also all of the individual challenges that come up in people's personal lives. So mental health support is going to be different for different people. And so we try to provide different sort of levers and platforms. We partner with Modern Health globally, which is our mental health therapy and coaching platform. We actually, as of May 1st, are expanding that to also cover dependents, which I'm really excited about, so that folks, partners, children can also benefit from the coaching and dedicated mental health support of Modern Health. We also have an employee assistance program in the US, which offers dedicated counseling and support for substance abuse and other similar issues. And then we have a number of sort of interventions or platforms that support wellness as a whole. So we have a pretty flexible lifestyle reimbursement program, which we originally had sort of a standard gym membership, but recognize that employees have different needs and have different focuses. So folks are also able to use it for meditation, for massage, and for education, for buying programming to help improve themselves. Time off and our entire conversation about vacations all supports mental health. It all supports mental wellness. And so making sure that folks are getting time away, that folks understand how to raise the hand for help is critical. Our flexible Fridays obviously support mental health and mental wellness. We also have done some targeted outreach. And so when schools in the Bay Area sort of shut down and we heard from parents, people were really concerned, we did a one-time stipend just to share some extra cash with parents who were really struggling to scramble and find childcare provision and support. And we partner with Maven as well globally for sort of pre-current and recent parents in supporting the parenting journey. We know that parents are working sort of 8 jobs at once, preparing and bringing a new child, and then also obviously their full-time jobs. And so by providing more support, providing resources, not just coaching and knowledge, but also funding, it allows us to hopefully make what is always going to be a pretty stressful and transformative time maybe a tiny bit more feasible and better. And it's something that is really important for a company that values diversity. If folks have to choose between having a family and working at the company, you're not going to end up with a very diverse workforce. And so supporting parents of all kinds, all genders and all family formation types is absolutely critical for mental health in general. And then the last piece is really fostering great relationships with the HR team and providing very clear avenues for folks to ask for help. So we're not psychiatrists, we're not trained crisis negotiators, but our HR team is equipped to listen, to respond, and to direct folks to resources, as well as working for extended time off. We have a very flexible time off policy, as well as extended leaves, where folks are having a particularly hard time, they can get a little extra time, a little extra grace, and a little extra assistance. And then I feel like I've talked about modeling maybe too much, but the other really critical thing for me is modeling. And so talking about having our leaders talk about when they're having a rough time, when they're stressed, having leaders talk about using Modern Health, talking to therapists, I think is transformational. When an executive who is under incredible stress, responsible for millions and millions and millions of dollars in headcount costs in business, says, I'm having a rough time, so I'm talking to a therapist. That is a signal to every employee, hey, it's okay. You can go get help. And the hardest thing for mental health is to get people to use the services. We have world-class support with Modern Health. All of our, obviously, insurance carriers also have great mental health resources. It's really hard to take that first step to say, hey, I want to talk to someone and go out and sort of reach. And the more that we can create an environment where that is normal, where it's not stigmatized, where you can recognize you can be great and healthy and happy and still need a little help, is, I think, the most important thing we can do. And so every time I say like, hey, I'm going to go to a therapy session, or, a leader in the company says the same thing, I think it goes a lot farther than you would think.
I definitely think it goes a lot farther. I love seeing when people have therapy publicly blocked off on their calendars as well, to just say, don't look over, this is my therapy time as well. Huge proponent of that myself personally. And also in the examples that you shared too, I think it is a really interesting, delicate balance of really not taking this one size fits all approach to mental health and thinking about what people need, but also providing the resources, being proactive and asking the specific questions, providing that health, the stipend for parents, for childcare, and really reaching out and asking people what they need and want and providing a suggestion, but also looking for feedback is so critical. And there's so much research that says, when you set up really great programs and make the environment better for working parents or any historically marginalized group, it's better literally for everyone at the organization as well. In your answer, you talked about kind of the role of the human resources and people team. And we know that historically perceptions have been, HR is the principal's office, or, when someone from the people team joins your meeting, you have to be on your best behavior. I would love to know, what is the current kind of perception of people or HR teams in your mind right now? And aspirationally, where would you want to see that descriptor go in terms of when people think of HR and people folks, they think blank?
That's a great question, and it's tough. I think HR as a function, people, personnel, what it was, 50 years ago,
Yeah.
has undergone such a transformation, but it's got so far to go. Every few years, there's this meme, HR is not your friend, and HR is not your friend. Like you can be friends with people, but as a function, HR has an opportunity to both meet the needs of the business and also support the employees. And in the current talent market, it's never been more important to take care of people, even not as a human. Obviously, everyone should be a human, and I want to take care of people. But even if you take a very cold mercenary approach, treating people well is a business imperative. Treating people well makes you more money. It makes you more successful. And so you don't even have to be a good person or care about people to realize that it's really important that you treat people well. And HR people are folks who, for a living, understand how to support and how to deliver a good employee experience. Where I think HR is now is getting into a lot of those important conversations around, what do employees want? What are they feeling? How can we do this better? Where I think it's going over time is being more driving that conversation, bringing data, speaking from the employee-centered approach and saying, here's where we are, here's what folks need, here's why it's really important. I hope and expect that most people at front have a good opinion of the people team. And it's something that we also test and study and ask about. And every time a frontier sort of says anonymously in feedback, like, this is the best people team we've worked with, or I feel like I'm really cared about, that's a good signal.
Yeah.
And when that's not the case, and when we do hear, and even at Front, which is, I think, a company that has been very intentionally HR and people centric since its inception. It's a company that has leaned in and invested more in our function than I've really seen companies of similar scale. But it's not perfect. And so every time we do hear something like, well, I didn't want to go to HR, I didn't want to escalate it, I didn't want to, bring in the principal into the conversation, there has to be an immediate and constant intervention to say, hey, like, things don't have to be awful to involve us. You don't need to be, HR is not the sort of last resort. HR is a partner for the journey. And as employees, the best outcome of any sort of performance problem is correction and overachievement. The best outcome of any sort of employee relations bit of discomfort is resolution and making people comfortable and happy and supported. And the earlier and more proactively HR can partner, the better outcomes are. And I think the function has come a long way. I think we're doing quite well at front, but the work is never finished. And until everyone immediately thinks like, oh, I can benefit from bringing in HR, even if it's just coaching, saying, hey, I've got a tough conversation coming up with my manager. I really want to share this. Can you help me sort of think about how to structure and approach it? I think that's where we need to get. We're on the path, and I think the craft is on the path. But if I said like it's perfect, I'd A, be lying, and B, would be under recognizing the folks for whom they haven't gotten the experience they want from HR, or who don't understand that. And so we're in a good place and a great foundation for the next phase of improvement.
Absolutely. Everybody is bringing their own experiences into the workplace. You can have the best in class, team and perception, but just having that understanding of, again, people are at different points of their careers, and bringing that into the workplace is critical. And happy and people who feel, seen, heard, and understood produce better work. So it is better for the business overall. David, is there anything that I didn't ask you in our conversation that you would like to share with folks who are listening, or, underscoring 1 to 2 key takeaways, perhaps about modeling? No, I'm just kidding. That you hope people bring with them too.
I think the short answer is no. I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I think the most sort of top of mind thing to me is that most of this is about humanity. Mm-hmm. Most of this is about retaining and centering the human in business. And right. Business can make that very hard. Mm-hmm. But the value and the experience, not only financially, as you said, like happier, more engaged people do better work. You get better outcomes. You will make more money by treating people well. But also everyone who works in the business is a person, and losing sight of that is the start of all sorts of problems. Mm-hmm. I think the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity for the craft of HR is to center and retain our humanity, and the humanity at scale of an organization. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of really complex ways to think about that. But a really simple one is, what's the humane outcome? Mm-hmm. What's the way that I as a person would want to be treated? And if you center that in everything, you're actually going to be in a really good position.
I love that. It comes down to humanity and asking yourself those big questions, especially as leaders and people who are culture champions at an organization, which is literally everybody as well. David, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Christina, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, here at AllVoices, we really believe in employers and employees really being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to succeed overall. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.